So welcome everybody. Welcome to Illuminating Honour. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We're bringing you this as the very first of our Illuminating Honour series. So SoulAdvisor has decided to kind of highlight an aspect of wellness every month. And this month we're highlighting the theme of honour. And it's been so far a really interesting discussion up until the 13th of April. So today we're doing the first of our Illuminating, I guess you'd call them get together, yarn circles. And we're really privileged to have you all join us. And we hope that what we have to say is of real interest. Acknowledge country. So if you'd like to close your eyes and just feel yourself on whatever country you find yourself today. Just feel yourself on the country that you find yourself today. And start to breathe with that country, the waterways, the land below your feet, the sky above. Feeling your own roots moving deep down and your own expanded mind moving way up into the sky. And feel yourself extending your awareness out to all the horizons in the particular country in which you find yourself. And I'd like to invite you to experience yourself as part of this country, as one of the millions and billions of creatures and living entities within the country that you find yourself. Today, we're all here to talk about honour. And there can't have been anything more honourable than the lineages and the eons of elders and community who have cared for this country and the countries that you're all on, who've lent their lives to caring for all the creatures and all the beauty that we've been endowed with here on this planet. So please join with me in acknowledging and thanking very deeply, the elders and the lineages that have protected this country. And more generally, all the lineages that we all come from. Giving deep thanks for being here, body, mind, and soul, at this point in the world. And thinking about all the sacrifices and the joy that have gone into bringing us as a living entity here today. And I'd like to welcome all of you here to this seminar or this chat or this yarn and ask you to gently open your eyes and join with us to talk about honour. I guess we're here today to talk about honour, and we've chosen Japanese yogis in particular to talk about honour because it's part and parcel of what we do. It's a big word for us, the concept of honour. It's a big word in the Japanese lexicon. There's a lot of subtle ways of talking about honour, and it's almost a practice of being Japanese. So this gentleman here, who I'd love to pay my respects to and therefore honour, has given us so much. He had an incredible life. He was a spy in the First World War. He was somebody that travelled with Gandhi himself and learnt many things from Gandhi. He came himself from a very progressive family in Japan that also was very respectful of the Buddhist traditions of Japan, but welcomed all kinds of spiritual leaders into their house. So Oki himself was quite a sickly child, and he had all kinds of influences. He was kind of brought back from the brink of near death as a child by people who had a lot of knowledge in health and healing. And so he devoted the rest of his life to really bringing about a shift in perspective around health and healing. And he had an incredible influence. He traveled with Bec Fish and a lot of the other Indian gurus around the world, bringing the concept of yoga to a very new field. And now look at us. In Australia, we have 33,000 yogis in Australia, which is quite something. So, and a lot of those are Japanese yogis. So I'd really like to honor Oki-san, if I can. And I'd also like to honor all of those of you here who've continued to carry his lineage down through the ages, and to, with your heart, minds, and soul, bring that discipline or that practice to all the people whose lives you've touched. And I'm not going to say the word cure, because as healers, we can never cure anybody, but we can invite them to cure themselves. And all of us have been very, very busy in that pursuit. So what I'd love to do before we go a little bit further in exploring the generalized concept of honor is invite those Japanese yoga teachers in our SoulAdvisor community who've joined us here today to present, to say just a little bit about who you are and how you came to be practicing Japanese yoga. So I'm just going to go down with whom I can see here. And the first person I can see is Linda, up there in Yeppoon. Perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, thanks, Kate, for the invitation to join today. I have had a connection with Japan since I traveled there as a high school student when I was 15 years old. And that was a very transformational experience at that age, to be immersed in the culture, the food, the language, even the schooling. So it's kind of had a deep place in my heart, Japan and the culture there. And like you said, in terms of honor, the language itself, embedded in the language is this respect to our elders. So yeah, in my talk, I'd like to honor my teachers.
I was about 24 and I was in France doing a bit of, as you do, a bit of grape picking on a vineyard. And I remember when I was exhausted one break, I was lying on the grass and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And I was just, I've not got the direction yet. I haven't found what I'm really like, want to sink my teeth into and be passionate about. And I remembered that I hadn't, I was very interested in shiatsu and Zen shiatsu at that time. So I was like, I'm going to go back and do the Zen shiatsu course and finish that and get cracking into that. And then that led me into discovering the Japanese yoga, ki yoga. So I trained at the Zen Renaissance Healing Centre in Bondi Junction with Jack Marshall.
I stayed in Australia, in Sydney for 2 weeks, and I did Japanese yoga every day. And when I went back to London, I had this amazing feeling. It lasted about 2 weeks, and then there was nothing filled that void. Yeah, and then I got depressed. So most yoga teachers, Japanese yoga teachers, have some element that brings them there. So I got depressed, which I couldn't snap out of. So I thought I need to take control of this. So I moved back to Australia and came and studied with the only school that was here when I came back was Janie Lamore, Zen Ki. And she taught me the structure and the basics. And then I had the honor of training with Andrei Gospodarczyk. It serendipitously happened. And he was like, put the pieces of the puzzle. I'm dyslexic, so I really, I learn in a different way. And when I trained with Andre, it was like lightning bolt moments. Putting things together. It was like, of course.
I was already so heavily invested in Iyengar yoga before I found Japanese yoga, and I'd been, studying in India and was kind of pretty committed to that path. And I had a couple of little children, and I was in Sydney. And a yoga teacher training course in Japanese yoga sprung up in my neighborhood. So I was in Avalon, or I was near to Avalon. Jeremy, Bec Fish, Fiona and Richard too in the breathing space. It was a great little community that we had there. And of course, Jack Marshall at Zen Ran in Bondi Junction and all of the crew in there.
I think we're all pretty familiar with this gorgeous yin-yang. And it's very much the fundamental of the Tao and the fundamental of Japanese yoga as we know it. And it implies that within the light, which is that beautiful white semicircle, there's always dark. And within the dark, there's always the seed of the light. And that there's a continual interaction between the two extremes, whether it be up and down, night and day, male, female, etc., etc. And from that duality, all things rise. So it's the rich interaction of the duality that brings about all phenomena. And I'd just like to invite all of us who are present, except those who are driving, please, Joe and Anastasia, to do a little something called Gassho, as we call it in Japanese yoga. So Gassho is when we bring our hands together slightly away from the chest with our elbows slightly lifted. And I always like to think of those elbows as smiling up. So, and we feel the left and the right side, or that we pay homage, I guess, to bringing the understanding to our practice and to our lives that oneness expresses itself as duality, but we're all part of the same oneness. So if we were in Japan, we'd get very used to bowing to those we meet and bowing every time we went to our yoga mat and bowing to literally everything. And I just want you to, for a moment, bow. So bring your hands into Gassho and bow and close your eyes and feel what that is for you. I'd love you. Oh, I'm so sorry. You'll need to unmute if you're going to contribute. But I'd love to know how that makes you feel in your body. So I'd love to hear from those present what that feels like.
I think it's like a surrender and a humbleness that I feel.
Beautiful. And is that echoed amongst you all, or does anybody else feel anything different?
I feel like, every time I make that gesture, that mudra, what's within that is this kind of deep code, a code of a lineage that just goes back and back and back. It's like an ethos. And it's communicated through that gesture, and it's multilingual and it's multidimensional in that same regard. It's understood everywhere.
It truly is. And if we practiced any other form of yoga, or if we were in Nepal or India or Bangladesh or wherever else, then that would become namaste, of course, which means exactly the same thing. I salute the divinity in you. So we understand that no matter our trespasses or our limitations, that who we're looking at is the reflection of divinity, and that we too are divine. And really, as we say, we're a spirit having a human experience on this planet. So when we bow to each other, it's about acknowledging that journey and that we're both on it, and holding each other to our higher selves, honoring that part of ourselves. So I just love that. Is there anything else that anybody would like to say before I flick to the next slide?
Just the bowing of the head to the heart, the honoring of that we have our intellect, we have this incredible mind, but that by this gesture of bringing some reverence back to the heart is what I always feel with it as well, like this unconditional loving connection to the heart, and then that is then honored as we do it to one another as well.
Absolutely. It's like, sorry, Jeremy, carry on.
I might add, everyone knows how busy I can be, and for me it can be somewhat of a gateway, in that everything preceding that in the moment brings you to now, and that you can be present with what you're doing. And then when you need to finish your humble practice or whatever the case may be, and you acknowledge what you have done, you can move back out into the busy world, holding the space.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's just a continual memory of that, isn't it? And Linda, you've spent time in Japan, and I know Gez, you have too. Oh, Sinden, you have too. I'm not sure if I'm missing anybody else here who has, but you know, it's always about that, isn't it? No matter which way you turn, there's somebody bowing. It's a beautiful reminder, truly a beautiful reminder. So this is a calligraphy. Those of you who've been to Japan or know a little about Japan know that it's a practice. Doing calligraphy is much like any other form of yoga in that it's a mindfulness practice. And this particular calligraphy was done by Oki-san, or Oki, our teacher, our initial teacher, way back. And it says, life force is God. And I guess it's the fundamental part of our practice to understand that life force moves through everything, and that's what we are honoring in our practice, and that's what we are actualizing in our movement towards wellness. And so I just thought I would share that because it's beautiful, isn't it? Like looking at those particular figures, wow, those characters, it allows you to dream into that concept, or for me anyway. Would anybody like to comment before I move on?
It's you just very quickly, I was thinking about on the way here to our meeting together about this concept of life, godliness or God connection. For each of us it can be different, but this experience of honoring the life force within us and then therefore each other. There's like, that's this realization that we are literally all interconnected, and it's all from that spark of life force. So, you know, this concept of greater creator energy or God energy comes into vision, where this interconnectedness dances and plays with our consciousness together, and the journey within ourselves as well.
So true, Bec. And I'd love us to just all take that little leaf, or the big leaf in the case of Linda, hold up your leaves so that those that will watch this video afterwards can see your little leaf. Yay. And I'm just going to take us into something here, which helps us to establish a sense of wonder. So this is a rapeseed leaf. And it's actually a microscopic version, clearly, of a rapeseed leaf. But isn't it amazing that we're walking around this planet surrounded by these beautiful beings, trees and little plants and fungus and whatever have you, and they're all so intricate and so full of life force and so beautiful, you know? So I would like us to just take that little leaf and place it in your palms so that your eyes are downcast. And we're going to practice just for a few minutes, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, something that we call Zazen, or Zen meditation. So traditionally in Indian meditation and many other forms of meditation, it's done with your eyes shut. But in the Zen tradition, it's done with your eyes open. And I'll explain why in a minute. But it's particularly different to do a meditation with your eyes open, because it again says we are part of everything and everything is part of us. And it's not that we're trying to remove ourselves from all that is, it's that we're trying to understand all that is and integrate all that is and understand ourselves as part of all that is, and to operate with peace and serenity and connectedness within that, rather than remove ourselves from it in order to find peace and serenity and connectedness. So just while we're here, I'd like you to allow your eyes to soften And allow the broadness of your cheekbones so that there is no resistance to the air that's flowing into you, the life force that's moving through you. And allow your own hand to relax around that leaf. Allow your own eyes to soften around your gaze towards that leaf. And in whatever way makes sense to you, explore the life force or the pulse or the energetic of that leaf resting in your hand. Giving honor to all that has gone into making that little leaf that's so kindly volunteered itself to be part of your practice. Now I'm going to be quiet for 2 minutes and just allow your presence to coexist with the presence of that leaf. And let's just very slowly honor the life force that flows through you and through that leaf by bringing your leaf up into Gassho. Feeling the bowing of your head and the humility of the sacrifices that are given by all things to give you your life. in this particular incarnation. And gently, gently placing the leaf down somewhere near you so you can stay close and feeling the peace that comes from falling back away from the busy, busy mind into that moment. Thank you. So I'm very aware that we've passed the time that we had available, and I would just like to briefly, for those that can stay with us, explore these concepts. But does anybody need to leave this moment? Nope. Well, if you do, let me know. So these are the 5 principles that form the basis of our Okido yoga philosophy, and they're 5 really beautiful principles that you've alluded to in talking about what it is to be a Japanese yoga teacher. And I think the first one is one for you, Deb Shepherd, if you're still here, which is Kansha. And it's the most gorgeous of concepts. It's the concept of unconditional gratitude. And Oki-san explained it, and I'll read because his words are better. If we have the attitude that we are being taught by God, then we can accept everything with unconditional gratitude. If we're only grateful for such things that are convenient for us and which make life easier, or if we only feel gratitude for if something is done for us, then our gratitude is conditional. So Kansha is unconditional gratitude of the full acceptance that whatever happens, an attitude of gratitude is good. Zange, unconditional repentance, which kind of triggers a lot of us Westerners when we think of the word repentance because it's such a religious term. But let me explain what Oki was saying when he said unconditional repentance. He said, we are enabled to live our life due to many things. Through the cooperation of all life force, we have come into being and continue to be able to live. We are continually hurting ourselves and others through our transgressions, misdeeds, and our offenses. This we're usually not aware of. If we can become aware and feel that all we commit transgressions, then we can forgive one another. We are enabled to live life due to the sacrifice of other beings. So it gives us a generous mind if we understand that it's impossible not to sin in Western terms, or not to be dangerous to others, or not to eat anything, or not to step on a bug, or not to pull off a leaf, or whatever it is. Geza, which is humbleness, which is when we help someone, we shouldn't expect a reward. And if we respect a reward, it is conditional help, and all help should be unconditional. Instead, we should feel grateful that this person has created a situation whereby we are graced with the opportunity to be able to help. This places us in a position of humbleness. So the concept being is that we grow every time we help. We grow, that person or that thing is suffering, but rather than go through the suffering ourselves, to be able to share in their journey out of that suffering is a huge joy. And the 4th one is Hoshi. That's the name of my dog, which means devoted service. And Hoshi is a life of giving. The fact that we are alive means we're constantly receiving. Thus, we should in turn give back. However, we should integrate and develop what we have received before we in our turn pass it on to others. So it's a process of maturation. So when we receive, we have to fully integrate, and that takes the peace that we develop through our meditative practice and our yoga and our sense of being present and conscious to really pull it in and absorb it, embody it, before we're then in a position where we can pass it on. In a life of service, we must do everything with respect for others. And then finally, Aigyo, which is love through action, which is the combination of all those other 4. which means to help others, whereby our talents and potential can manifest for the sake of happiness in others. This will lead to our own happiness. Aigyo develops a natural positive lifestyle and will bring value to all. So, I just love it. Anyway, love to hear comments or thoughts. Anybody has them? Or have I zenned you all out with the zazen? You're all on mute, but if anybody has anything to say, pipe up now.
I so love those. They resonate so deeply. Yeah, I think I particularly I love them all, but you know, that attitude of gratitude's a great philosophy to live by. Takes us out of any kind of, not that there's no judgment, but a victim mentality, or you know, something that is being done to us instead of done for us. Always just a slight change in perspective gives us so many so much more you know, explanation as to why things evolve or happen the way they happen, that there is some meaning behind everything.
Totally.
Yeah, I love them all.
And I know that Deb, you've run a whole festival called the Gratitude Festival, so perhaps you'd like to pipe up as a non-Japanese yoga teacher, but the CEO of SoulAdvisor, and say a word or two about what gratitude is for you.
Well, just building on what Bec said then, I think for me, gratitude was always something that you can change your perceptions so quickly by and raising your vibration so quickly out of that space when you start to think of it beyond what you're perceiving it's being done to you. So for me, gratitude's always been a very easy way for us to actually navigate sometimes challenging places or times or situations. And as you said, it's not always being grateful for the things going your way. It's just being grateful for what you have, what you do have, because it's always, when you go looking, there's always something there to be blessed for. So yes, you're right, Kate. It's something that's very close to my heart. And there's been times I'm listening to this. I've have followed the Reiki principles, and you know, obviously there's similarities and differences, but it's the same thing, having those 5 core principles that you can work towards, although sometimes very simple, can navigate really incredibly challenging times. So I find it also very empowering to be able to be in that space of gratitude, because then you can actually then take back what's been done to you by perceiving it the way that you want to see it as well.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you so much. Has anybody else got anything that they'd like to contribute? Okay, going once, going twice, going thrice. I'm moving us on to the next slide, which is just to talk. Oh, I'm so sorry. It'll be this one. Oh no, it won't be that one. We've lost it. Woohoo. Okay, this one. So this is what we traditionally know as the 8 limbs of yoga, and any kind of yoga will practice these 8 limbs, any kind of Indian yoga, and us too as Japanese yogis. And I think that those who aren't too familiar with yoga don't understand that yoga's a whole of life discipline that involves asana, as you can see down in that right hand corner, the poses and postures. It also involves pranayama, which is working with our breath, but it also, on top of all that, involves pratyahara, which is control of the senses to the left there, dharana, which is immovable concentration. It involves yamas and niyamas, which are the yamas being the virtues or universal moralities, or our kind of code of conduct, I guess, which we've just read the Japanese version of the yamas, but there's another whole way of looking at it from an Indian perspective. Niyamas, which are the personal observances, like how we actually honor ourselves and look after ourselves. And then ultimately samadhi, which is absolute bliss. So, which is when we become one with everything. or have that understanding that we are one with everything. So I just wanted to point out with Japanese yoga a few little differences. There are 10 limbs of Japanese yoga. And if you look to step 7, which is bhakti, it's concentration on devoting ourselves to other through service work, whereby the ability to release all attachments will be developed. When we can trust in providence and concentrate fully on devotional service, we will develop an understanding, an unconditional zero mind. This will create a stable mind and heart. So that bhakti is really, really important, the service of yoga. We're doing this not to have, well, of course we all have incredible bodies from our yoga practice, but it's not for that we do it. It's to be of service. And bhakti is thrown in there as a really important point. And the other point that differs a little with Japanese yoga is after samadhi, step 8, we move to buddhi. And buddhi is seeing divinity in oneself and others, as shown by Gassho, which we did before. It's learning to respect oneself, other people, and all things, to feel grateful for the essential value of everyone and everything. And then ultimately that leads to prasad. So prasad, what I love about it is its inclusivity. We didn't stop at samadhi where we suddenly became enlightened, but prasad is the universal or true joy. It's a training to feel grateful for all things. It's to unite our own joy, the joy of others, and the joy of God together. So that I love. And I guess, you know, implicit in all these concepts is a deep, deep undercurrent of honor. I'd love to hear from anybody that's brought anything up for, if you would like to contribute. Any thoughts?
I think it was a beautiful weaving together of, like, you know, when you say my freedom is your freedom, or my joy is your joy, like we don't really experience that level of elation solo as much as we do when others are collectively experiencing your joy together with you, or yeah, like having it sort of, yeah, that sharing of that experience or those emotions. It's yeah, it's a beautiful thing to share and uplift it all and experience it together.
And I think that's really shown, isn't it, in Japanese yoga. We do a lot of things that aren't done in other yoga classes, which is paired activity or group activities where we're all just and there's a lot of laughter, isn't there?
There's a lot of laughter, and I was about to say that, a lot of really pure fun and experiencing things that yeah, just the fun of it, and the connected joyful playfulness as well is something that I was always really drawn to. Yeah.
Things that resonated for me with Brizan was that whole focus. It's not just about me being joyful, but we all celebrate and be joyful together. And I think we've had that conversation before. There's no point just being well in your own self. It's about to rise across our society, our relationships, our community, our planet. It's for me, Brizan, to me means it's not just the individual, it's the collective, which I love.
There's a word for Japanese culture, which is gohan, which means sticky rice. And it's like that, you know, there's so many people crammed onto that tiny little island of Japan when you go there, all learning how to live very well together and honor each other. But, you know, a decision is made with a collective intent in mind always. And the way that people are is very much about that. I've always felt like my Japanese friends were psychic, because before I even knew I needed something, they'd know what I needed. Yeah, it's a great practice. So just to
Can I add to that?
Please, Yolande.
Okay. I think when I feel into those 8 limbs, 10 limbs, 4 limbs, 2 limbs, I think really the undercurrent of living with reverence is what's really there. And there's that quote which I'm not able to recall exactly, maybe someone else can, but it's about living an examined life. Like you haven't really lived if the life that you've lived has not been examined. And what these guidelines give us is the stepping stones to examine our life. Like we might begin for us personally with our daily habits. It's like, well, it's autumn, and I'm going to just see what might happen if I start doing a neti pot every morning, and start honoring my beautiful, beautiful sinus passages, which, we never really honor until they're all flagged up and, blocked up. But so this is where we begin. Maybe for that person, the first step in honoring and examining our life. And so that, hopefully then the whole of life becomes one of reverence, one of respect, one of integrity, as those roots spread out.
I love it. And it's the concept of listen up, isn't it? Like if you honor somebody, you'll listen until they've stopped talking, and you'll take everything that they say in and absorb and integrate, and hopefully in time take it out. So, that's the reverence that comes. And when you were saying 8 limbs, 2 limbs, 56 limbs, I was thinking about a book I'm reading about soil, which is giving me deep reverence and honor for this incredible planet. But the person who wrote that talks about the fact that when you take a foot on fertile, good soil, that below that footstep is 72,000 limbs, legs of little creatures of all sorts. So, there's a cause for great joy and great honoring.
Yeah, let's not limit our limbs.
Let's not. Yeah. So I think that really we've talked for a long while, and I do hope that it's been of interest to those that are listening in, and that it will continue to be of interest to those that will listen in hereafter. It's been really a great honor to have all of you here on this Zoom. Thank you so much for being here. I've loved your company, and I'm hoping that those of you who are here might join us again at 5:30 to embody what we're teaching here, to go through a simple practice that will be presented by a few of us this evening, and we'll give you some ways of, I guess, stepping out and really weaving honor into the very fiber of how you are on a day-to-day basis. So in particular, we'll be honoring the fact that change is constant, and that the seasons are constantly changing, and that we can bring ourselves into alignment and honor those seasons and the way that they move within us. So I'd just like to ask once again if there's anything anybody else would like to contribute, or something that's bursting through for anybody. Clearly not. In which case, I would like to very much thank you, Linda, for being part of us, for presenting all the way from Yeppoon and kick-starting the whole process. And say,
Thanks, Linda.
Thanks so much, Kate, for hosting and bringing us together. And it was a lovely opportunity to review life philosophy and, just come together on similar values. So like a family across the world.
I can feel my vibrations. Everyone's vibrating on a high level. It's nice. It's really nice. Like the leaf vibrating.
And thank you, Sinden, so much for your beautiful enthusiasm and creativity in words. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I'd like to also thank Bec and Gez there for all you two have brought to the world together and apart and every which way, and for being here.
Oh, thanks, Kate. There is actually another name for Kate, you guys. It's Kate the Great is actually
Kate
her
the
name.
Great.
Or Kate, she's also known as Kate the Greatest.
By Bec's son, who's lovely. Such a little
But what
cutie.
about the great Kate, Mother Teresa?
Stop it immediately.
Thank you.
everyone.
I've learnt a lot, and yeah, it's been good. Very good.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Yeah, thank you, Yolande. Thank you, Deb, for bringing about SoulAdvisor all together. And thank you, Joe Taro, for being quietly in the background there.
Yes. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Joe.
Yay.
And thank you, Joe Doyle and Anastasia, for listening in and driving along. And look forward to seeing you all. I do hope that we get to meet again this evening.
Yeah.
Fare thee well.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Kate.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.